sounds good.
Hi, everybody. Thanks so much for joining us. This is the third of our online artist talk series. It's with great pleasure that I introduce the most wonderful painter, Laura Vahlberg. I'm sure a few of you know her very well personally. If not, perhaps you know her work on Instagram. I've personally followed her for a very long time. It looks as if her computer might have frozen temporarily again, but I hope not. We've just got a few more entering the chat. And yeah, so I don't want to delay any further. Thanks everybody for your patience so far. We've been having slight technical glitches with the internet connection, but I'm hoping it will sort itself out. So without further ado, Laura Vahlberg. Go for it, Laura, if your internet's working.
Hi, I am here, by the way.
Hi, Leah. Uh-oh. Laura, you're still a bit frozen. We can't hear you. It might be when you share your. Okay, she's left and hopefully is coming back. It might be when she shares her screen. If that's the case, Laura.
Okay. Okay. Thanks. Okay. Just talking to my friend. So hopefully this will work now.
Okay. Okay. Super.
We were thinking maybe the internet just got like added or something. So okay.
We're dealing with the aftermath of a hurricane here, so
yes. Yes.
Go for it, Laura. I've introduced you. I'm not sure if you heard, but please.
Okay, great. Yeah, I didn't, but I'm sure it was great. Okay, great. So I guess we'll go ahead and get started.
Yeah, please go ahead.
Okay. Well, y'all, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciate y'all coming to hear this talk. I love what North London Group has been doing lately. It's really an exciting series of talks they've started. I'm really honored to be a part of it. So I'm going to go ahead and just share the screen and start the slideshow I have. Let's see. Here we go. Okay.
I think perhaps when Laura shares her screen, there might be a slight technical glitch. If so, I'll ask her to send me over. Yeah, that's what's doing it. All right, bear with us, guys. The slight technical glitch, unfortunately, like I said before, there's been a hurricane that's affected. Oh, Laura, you're back. Okay, I'm just going to ask.
Fine. Okay, so can you hear me all right now?
Yeah, you're back. You're back.
Okay. Wonderful. Okay, great. So I'll just start by saying, y'all, please feel free to ask any questions as they arise. You can type them into the chat, and I'd love to do Q&A kind of as things come up. So I think that'll be good.
I'll keep an eye on the chat for you, Laura. If anything comes up, I'll shout you out.
Okay, great. So I'm just starting with, I actually found this image online. It isn't anything I made, but I wanted to just have an example of paint by numbers because I would say that's probably one of the earliest influences for me artistically. My great-grandfather was in a nursing home. I was really young, and I remember visiting him, and it's one of my earliest memories. He had all these tiny little cups of paint, you know, the way they're kind of all in a row linked together, and they were open and each one had a number, and he had one tiny little brush, and he would just spend all of his days, I think, in the nursing home painstakingly making these paintings. My grandparents had a lake house, and the lake house was full of his paint by numbers, and a lot of them were actually paint by number versions of old master paintings. Like I think there was a Renoir, and I just remember spending a lot of time looking at them and sort of puzzling at how one little spot of color in this sort of strange squiggly shape could collaborate with so many other little spots of color to make this illusion of reality. I just found that just fascinating. And so I don't know, I have kind of a soft spot for paint by numbers.
Laura, just to let you know, we can't see you. We can hear you. We can hear you perfectly well, and we can see
Oh, good.
we can hear
Okay.
your screen perfectly, but we can't see you. Just to let you know.
Okay. Let's see. I'm not sure how to fix that. I think.
Don't worry about it.
Okay. Great.
Let's just go with it.
Okay, cool. You're still sharing the screen. Okay, great. So the next picture is, again, something I found online. I don't actually have any photos of these things I made when I was little. I wish I did, but I just don't. My grandfather was an army person. He worked actually with the Air Force, I believe, in the US Air Force. But after he retired, he had this wonderful workshop in his basement. And it was, I remember it being very tidy and meticulous. Everything had a specific place to live. And he would bring me into his workshop, and he had these, like the liquid acrylic paints that they're kind of like cylinders. I'm not really sure what their technical word is called, but he had like an amazing amount of colors. I mean, I just looked at it and it just felt like a buffet. And he'd bring me in there and have me do kind of all the decorating for his little projects. Like I painted these birds a couple of times. It was for a bird bath. I painted a fair amount of signs for him. There was a sign for the lake house he had me decorate. But those are kind of some of my earliest painting memories. I also had a poster of a Gauguin. I believe it was this one in my house growing up. And I'd say Gauguin is kind of a big influence for me because his paintings are just so right on so many levels. In a compositional sense, there's a rightness in the placement of the shapes where there's a harmony, but not too harmonious. There's just enough tension to kind of keep the eye engaged. And so I find his work really inspiring. My dad is a priest, and so I spent a fair amount of time in churches growing up. There was a church in Charlottesville, Virginia, that actually had Tiffany windows. And so these are actually photos of the Tiffany windows that I got to look at. And as I was putting this talk together, I started thinking, there's an interesting kind of relationship between paint by numbers and stained glass windows, the way these little shapes of color participate with each other to make a much grander vision. I've seen a lot of church windows and kind of stared at them for many hours. My dad was also really into collecting children's books. I think he really loves the art. And this one in particular, it's a little bit indulgent. For me, I would say this book is pretty far on the side of idealism for my taste, but I was just totally enraptured by the way the drawings in this book were made. They were so detailed and colors are so jewel-like. And every person is just so beautiful. It was, and again, there's a real theme of being in the woods and being kind of in harmony with nature. I did include on my slideshow here several books that really impacted me. This is another one, Where the Red Fern Grows. Just as a real page turner, but also a real emphasis on humans' relationship with nature and how it can be harmonious and not. But they're fiction, they're novels, they're fictions about young people's relationship with the earth So I think that was always really important to me and felt like resonated with me. So I'd say maybe around the time I was 10 or 11, I moved to a new town, Roanoke, actually, which is where I live now, Roanoke, Virginia. And I met this wonderful woman who taught art classes. And I think I was actually her first student, Sarah Rutherford. She's a wonderful painter. She's part of a co-op gallery here in Roanoke now. But one thing I found that was just so wonderful about her is that she would start us off with pure abstraction. This isn't actually one that she gave us, but it looks a lot like one of the worksheets she'd give us, where we would copy these little abstractions and kind of copy them several times. And so it really gave me an idea of a painting being a response to a rectangle. And that all of the pieces in a painting can kind of lose their names and just become shapes and colors. This is actually something I did kind of recently in a painting workshop where we did a composition exercises together. Much like what my teacher, Sarah Rutherford, would have us do. She'd have us do these giant, I mean, not really giant, maybe like 18 by 24 inch drawings on paper with Prismacolor markers. And she'd give us these instructions. She'd say, make a large shape, a medium shape, and a small shape. And then make a line that goes all the way across the page, and make a curvy line that doesn't go all the way across the page. And then have a pattern over here and maybe a circle over here. But we got to decide where to put them. She would just say, like, put these elements in this rectangle and kind of wrestle with the idea of where those elements can live. And it's really stayed with me. I think about it still all the time. So the next couple of images are paintings I made. I honestly don't remember exactly when I made them, but I know they were before I started studying with my mentor, Alana Hagler. I believe this was sometime in high school. You can kind of see the paint by number influence, how each shape is kind of contained within itself. I've always been a really fast painter. Most of my paintings are made in one session. This is another one. I think this one was made on site in my dad's barn in Alabama. I think this one was made from a photograph. I thought it would be fun for a while to make paintings of birds, like my friends' favorite birds, and give it to them as gifts. So I made a lot of these. It's a painting made on Cape Cod. My husband's family has a house there. It's a painting from college. This is the street where I lived. So you can tell I was definitely separating my shapes out. I was thinking about groupings of light world and shadow world. I also really loved saturated color earlier in my career. I was really interested in seeing a scene and kind of improving on it somehow. And in my mind, improving on it was making colors really bright and saturated. This is another one. I think this was my dad's church. I think I made it from a photo. Horse, apple of light. So this is a David Hockney. This is somebody I thought about earlier on in my career. You can kind of see some of the, maybe like this one. You can kind of see a little bit of a David Hockney influence. I also think like Gauguin, his compositions are just kind of perfect. The way everything kind of leans to the left, but then there's this strong, rigid shape on the left-hand side that kind of holds the painting up and keeps you inside. Another one. I'd love to make a painting like this someday. 6 panels, where each panel can kind of stand on its own, but then together it makes this like, wow. Fairfield Porter, I thought about him a lot in high school, actually. Thought his compositions were lovely. The colors were very separated out, and abstractly, most of his paintings just work so well. I love in this one how it's kind of light drenched, and there's just these kind of small pieces of dark, but for the most part, the whole painting is just kind of bathed in light. He seems like very strategic in where he puts his super darks. They're all kind of related to each other. This painting makes me think of Rothko, and I'll bring up Rothko again later. I think Rothko kind of takes the painting down all the way to its kind of nuts and bolts, where it's a rectangle speaking to a rectangle. It's got these kind of color fields inside a rectangle that just, they're like these strong human echoes of a rectangle. It's very conscious that it's a painting. And so ever since I've kind of fell in love with Rothko, I've been seeing his work and so many other people's work. Like this painting here, you can kind of see, it almost looks like 2 rows of Rothkos. Like there's the windows, the way there's the 2 rectangles next to each other, and then the 2 below, and then the 2 below that. There's this wonderful kind of framing structure that is self-conscious, but also is expansive. Lois Dodd, I'm a big fan of Lois Dodd. She does a lot of one-shots as well. But again, I think she has a wonderful sense in this painting of a ratio of the light world and shadow world, and how she's got this world of light inside the house, and then this other world of kind of dark, nocturne, purple sky. Another Lois Dodd, and I mean, again, Rothko, those 2 rectangles stacked on top of each other, and then the supporting kind of pillars on either side that the curtains form. And the way she made pattern with there's the patterns on the curtains, and then the pattern made by the rain, and how the patterns kind of tie all these color shapes together in an atmosphere. And I love this, the whole, like, art imitates life, imitates art. You can see her palette and the texture of the grass. It's kind of like looking in a mirror, but it's looking at the natural world. Lucian Freud, I thought about him a lot in college. The thick texture of his paintings. The sort of angstiness, I guess, that really resonated with me. But again, even though he's got a lot of shapes in here, and it's much closer to realism than a lot of my other works that I admire. If you kind of open your eyes really wide and look at it, like, I know it's classic to think of looking at a painting like squinting to kind of see it simplified, but it kind of works the same way if you open your eyes super wide. You can see it's like a big beige circle, and then a dark sort of half moon at the top, and then a gray half moon at the bottom, and 2 red spots where his ears are. I mean, it's simple in that way, and so creates such a wonderful sense of impact, where if you saw that painting across the room, it would still like go pow, even though you couldn't like see the eyelashes. I think he's kind of a genius in that way. You can kind of see this here. I love the detail in this painting, but again, I mean, if you super simplified it, it's kind of a white stripe at the top, and then beige, and then we got a black shape at the bottom and a yellow shape at the bottom. If you simplified it enough, it would be that, and it works. It's got this like kapow, and then if you get up close to it, it just gives and gives and gives. I mean, it looks to me like each window in these buildings he's painting is its own painting too. It's like a painting with it, and a painting, within a painting, within a painting. It's just amazing. Diebenkorn. I found Diebenkorn and Freud had a lot in common. I mean, the palettes are really different, but something about the texture of the paint and the sort of a brutality in a way to the way they apply paint and create structure in their paintings that really appeals to me. It feels like they're really building something. This was a poster. Well, it's a painting, but there was a poster of this painting at a coffee shop that I went to in college, and I'm pretty sure I just went to the coffee shop to visit that poster and just kind of spend time with that woman and those stripes. Now, I love the different kinds of greens, how they're just a little bit different enough. They're super similar, but they're just different enough to create this like kind of vibratory tension. Munch, I thought a lot about Munch in college, the idea of making a color as an emotional response, making shapes, kind of taking emotion into account when making shapes, as well as observing the natural world. Again, his compositions are kind of perfect to me. You can see how if you sort of open your eyes really wide, you can kind of see where the really dark shapes are, and how if the painting were just a white painting with those dark shapes on it, it totally works. There's something kind of strategic and like the ratio is just pleasing, and I mean decorative, but in the highest sense. I don't think decorative is a bad thing. Again, there's sort of a sense of Rothko here. You can see the stripes and the way the painting is held up by these two pillars of trees on either side. Okay, so some books I was really into. I still love Tom Robbins, even Cowgirls Get the Blues. Herman Hesse, Siddhartha, pretty much anything by Herman Hesse, I just love. I love the idea that these writers, they kind of did the same thing with shapes that Paint by Numbers do, where they would identify a symbol like a river and turn it on its head and have it behave in a different way than maybe the classic interpretation would be. Journey to Ixtlan, Carlos Castaneda. Just a lot of views on the world that are creative and unconventional and mysterious. The Wind-Up Bird Chronicle. Haruki Murakami does a lot of magical realism. There's another book he wrote where there's two moons in the sky. So it's like life as we know it, but just a little bit different. And I think a painting so often is like that too, where it's so much like, it can be so much like life, but then you can introduce another element, like another moon, you know, and then everything is familiar, but very strangely different. Okay, so I think this was the year 2015. Remember exactly why I felt this way, but I wanted to prove that I could do the magic trick, that I could make a painting look real, and make all of the little tiny details happen in a painting. And so I hunkered down. I got a studio um, in this really nice person's guest house. And I worked from photos and worked from grids and used tiny little brushes. And these took a long time. I took a lot of photos at the time and played around with cropping and kind of predetermining the composition. They ended up being very paint by number, in my opinion. And I think it was satisfying for a while until I felt kind of cramped. And so started going in the opposite direction and making these very brushy, fast paintings that were very limited in color palette, and lots of them. I probably made hundreds of them.
These are from observation, Laura?
I think they were mostly from photos, actually.
Okay.
Yeah. I mean, I think they were photos I took, but yeah. I was experimenting with multimedia, using charcoal and acrylic and painting on paper. And at the same time, I also got a job at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts. This is a picture of the museum. It's really beautiful space, and this kind of, it's called Blunt Park. Everybody called it Shakespeare for some reason. But just rolling green hills. There were always Canada geese on the pond. It was beautiful. And I worked in the kids section, and I made little art projects for the kids visiting there. But I also got to do a lot of work for the art education department, and they had me go through all these catalogs that the museum got that artists sent them from all over the world. And so I got to see a lot of really cool art that way. And I think they would have me cut them up for collage projects or something. But as I'm doing that, I was like, oh, this is like amazing. So I kind of got into a lot of artists that way. One of them was Eleanor Ray, huge fan, love her work. So here's some of her paintings. You can see how they work on an abstract level, but they're also have a sense of atmosphere and space, like familiar, like one could actually walk into these spaces. She really plays around with color being really close to each other, close values. And I did get to see her work in person. It came to Hollins University, which is not too far away from where I live. And her brushstrokes are just so, they're kind of calligraphic, buttery. I believe most of her paintings are one shots too. So there's kind of this sense that the whole painting's very glued together. It's all made in one session, one thought. There's no kind of layering of dry paint with wet paint on top. It's just very like a sealed experience. I think this is a painting. She actually went to the Villa de Livia.
Sorry to interrupt. I just got a question, and it's Rachel. She just asked if you could repeat who this artist is. And it's Eleanor Ray, right? That was.
Yes, Eleanor Ray, like R-A-Y. Yeah.
Sorry. She said thank you too.
Yeah, great. Yeah, I think the thing I admire about her work the most is that her compositions are just amazing. And there's this like a sense of breath to them in a way. And I think several of these paintings I'm showing you of hers are paintings of other artists' work. Like this, I can't remember what this is called, something like Spiral Jetty, but it was an artwork that was made out in nature, and then she made several paintings from that, from observing that person's installation. Peter Doig, another person I really got into looking through the museum's catalogs. Irish painter. Simple shapes, but also is able to kind of choreograph really tiny shapes in a way that adds to the composition, instead of kind of breaking it apart too much. They feel very cohesive to me and inventive. And look, I mean, he's got two dark shapes. It's the car in the bottom left-hand corner, and then the middle of the rainbow. And just the placement of those two dark shapes, it just works so well, where everything else is kind of in this different realm of light value. And I mean, he put a heart on a painting and it works. Amazing. Amazing. And again, like Roscoe, right? It's got the blue stripe at the top and then the dark stripe underneath it, and then a whole world of green. With all the lines are kind of like arrows pointing us around these color fields. Charles Birchfield, they had some Charles Birchfield original paintings at the Montgomery Museum of Fine Arts, so I got to enjoy them in person. Kind of get some ideas for plein air painting. I heard once, I think it was a talk with Elizabeth Flood. She said he would go outside and do these all day long paintings where he would set up in the morning and paint until the sun went down. And so he'd kind of get so many different times a day all in one painting. I just think that's so beautiful and kind of zen. And they look so magical, so many of them. I think this one in particular was at the Montgomery Museum. You can kind of see he painted sounds and movement, the way the whole world seems to kind of vibrate, and he did it. I mean, I don't know how he did it really, but he's sort of Van Gogh like paint strokes. Another show that came to the Montgomery Museum was at Bill Trailer. These wonderful, simple compositions where it just seemed like he really worked from his gut and not his head. He put the shape in the rectangle in just the right spot every time. Notice how you've got this house shape, blue, that's right in the middle, and then everything else around it activates it and supports it and really plays with the four sides of the picture plane.
Sorry, we've got another question that's from Claire Howard. She just wants to know who this is by.
Oh, Bill Trailer.
Bill Trailer. Okay.
Like, I think Traylor. I think that's right.
She says she also says thanks.
Yeah.
Hi, Claire. Sorry to interrupt you.
Oh yeah, no, please, anytime. Again, the echo of the rectangle, right? He's got the shape of the picture plane, and then he's got it kind of repeated but slanted. And so there's an echo, but also a distortion and a tension. And then this like wide amount of empty space at the bottom of the picture plane that totally works. Somehow it creates a heaviness to balance out all of the activity at the top. Ilana Hagler. So I got super, super lucky. And when I was living in Alabama, I met Ilana Hagler, who is just an amazing painter. She went to Pennsylvania Academy of Fine Art. She also studied with Israel Hirschberg. And she was living in Alabama because I think there was a teaching job there. And I met her through the other groups of artists that were already in Montgomery, and I signed up for her class, and she just opened my eyes. I mean, really, really amazing. I love her sense of composition. I definitely see Chardin here. It's one of her portraits. I think it was her grandfather. And this is a painting of a Monte Serrate, I think. It's the mountain in Civita Castellana, where I did end up going to the JSS in Civita program in the summer of 2017. But I saw this painting and I just thought it was kind of perfect. and inspired me to try to get there as well. This is an Alana Hegler painting. I think she went there in maybe 2015. But yeah, so now she also works for the Mint and the U.S. Mint. So if you ever get a U.S. quarter, you might get one that she actually designed. So pretty cool. That's her. So after working with her, she really kind of changed the way I saw things. She talked to me about becoming really specific and the idea that I don't really need to make the visual world look better because it's already pretty great. I can just kind of learn instead of try to improve. So these are some paintings I made once I started working with her. She taught me about the light world and the shadow world, kind of cemented that more in my head, how to separate those so that a picture can really feel readable in a value sense.
What year was this painting, Laura?
Oh, probably 2016. Yeah. Yeah, I started. Yeah, go ahead.
No, don't think that was
Okay. Yeah, I studied with Alana in 2016 after making all of those really slow paintings from photographs, and then went kind of did a 180, and all of these are from observation. This was my house at the time. Just kind of made a bunch of interiors. Used a lot of palette knives. This was an attempt to make a really long-term painting. And I was kind of wrestling with the changing weather and how to keep the painting unified and not broken up too much, but I still really wanted to add a lot of the little tiny details. Made a bunch of kitchen paintings at this point. I think I didn't want to clean my kitchen, so I painted it instead.
Would you go slow down ever so slightly, Laura?
Sure.
It's just lovely. And these were one-shot paintings or more paintings that you spent a little bit more time on?
I'm trying to remember. I think I did spend more time on these.
Yeah.
And I was thinking about Stanley Lewis, and I remember seeing a video of him where he was painting and he would add pieces of canvas to his painting as he went. And so might be able to see in this one, I think this is 3 different pieces of canvas.
Yeah, we can see.
And this was actually, I think this painting and this paint, they were one painting at one point, and I cropped them down. That was one thing at the JSS and Civita program. They kind of taught me the idea that you can just take a primed piece of canvas and use masking tape and just put it on a board, and from there you can make a painting. You can crop it. I love the idea of flexible dimensions, and so I was kind of running with that. But I guess I actually made this painting before I went to JSS, so I guess that was more of a Stanley Lewis thing.
Just had a little chat, someone in the chat telling you that they love these paintings.
Oh, yay.
It's Lee, I think.
Hey, Lee. Yeah, but I think in these kitchen paintings, I was sort of feeling overwhelmed by all of the shapes. And so just kind of took a piece of a shape at a time. Like, I guess if you look in the shelves above the stove, you can kind of see there's just maybe a shadow of a shape and not the highlight. Just kind of painted the shapes I liked and organized them. So the idea of kind of making it feel like a kitchen or like a countertop felt pretty secondary to putting accurate color shapes together in an organization that felt good.
Mhm.
It's another one. So this was a coffee grinder with a dish towel on top of it, and I was really interested in that part. And then you can kind of see in the top left-hand corner, it's really just a few shapes that it wasn't as interesting to me. And I guess I wanted it to play more of a supporting role. So I didn't articulate it in the same way.
Just got another question from Michelle, and I believe the question is how much is brush and how much is palette knife within these paintings?
Oh, that's a great question. I think they are mostly palette knife.
Mostly palette knife.
That was a big change from learning from Alana as well. I got to see her demo a few times, and I always thought palette knife was kind of messy, and so I just didn't really mess with it. And then I saw her work, and I was like, oh, you can be so precise with a palette knife. I mean, you can just pick up the perfect amount of paint and put it precisely in a space. There's not going to be any sort of rogue paintbrush hair going, in a place I don't want it. Something about knives that are just they can be delightfully precise.
Michelle also added beautiful paintings, by the way.
Thank you. Here's another one. Yeah, this was a one shot, and it was kind of an all day painting. And I remember thinking it was a special kind of experiment because I was painting over an old painting. And I painted the ground first and then worked on the wet ground for the whole painting. And I thought that was really fun because it kind of made it helped the painting have a sense of unity, because everything was sort of tinged with that ground color. So I've done that several times since. I think it's a lot of fun.
What sort of ground is it? Do you remember, Laura, what kind of ground you painted on top of?
Well, I'm not super intentional about it, to be honest. I like to, when I'm done mixing my colors for a painting, I take all of the colors and turn them into just a pile of gray, and I usually use that, some kind of neutral gray that I already have to cover a painting, and then kind of respond to that from there. I don't really think there is a magic ground color. Every color in a way seems like it's got its own character. And so you present one character and then you can just respond to it and then respond to that and respond to that. And none of them are better or worse. They're just kind of their own thing. So that's kind of how I see it. Another kitchen painting. This one was kind of wild. I've been listening to a lot of Savvy Painter podcasts, and I listened to one with Chris Liberti, fantastic painter. And in his podcast, he said that when his composition isn't working, he just gives the painting a quarter turn to the right, which I think is just so wild and so brave. And in this one, I didn't try that. I gave it a quarter turn and worked on it, it's basically like starting a painting over. But you've got all the same colors there and a lot of the same shapes. So I turned it, kind of started over, and then turned it back. And I found that was really, really fun and exciting to kind of destroy it and build it in that way.
How do you mean by that, Laura? Did you set your easel up in a slightly different position and just go for it again? Is that what you're saying?
No, like I took I guess I was working on a drawing board. I just took the drawing board and turned it so that, like, instead of the painting being horizontal, it was then vertical. So the whole picture.
Okay. Oh wow, like
yeah.
okay. All right. And so
Yeah.
you started a new painting, or you just kind of
I worked on the same painting, but oriented vertically.
okay.
And did that for maybe a day. This was a long-term painting. I think this one took a couple weeks.
Okay.
And then I didn't like the way it looked vertically, so then turned it back again horizontally and kind of worked into it from there. And it just made some really kind of fun, unpredictable shapes in that way.
Interesting. We've just had another question asking how big is this painting, and on average, I think with the kitchen series, what sort of scale are we talking about? And English people are going to have to adjust to inches.
Inches, yeah. Oh boy, yeah. Because I don't know the centimeter thing. I always have to do the conversion. I think this one is 16 by 20, so I guess that would be like the size of a really big art book, so not huge. Um, I mean, these were all made on my French easel, so they have to be kind of on the smaller side.
Yeah.
I think all of the kitchen paintings, I mean, I made them on a drawing board, and these drawing boards are, I think, 21 by 20, 22 by 28 inches.
Okay.
So everything's kind of smaller than that. Yeah. It's a self-portrait made on site in front of a mirror. I was excited about it because the paintbrush like went from my hand to my head. Just like kind of happened that way. And I was like, yeah, it's kind of a fun narrative right there. I don't think I have this anymore. I really wish I did. I made this during Alana's class, thinking about deep in corn and maybe some Wayne Tybald. Just the way roads can kind of make arrows to move us around the picture plane, and how can the middle of a picture feel like a void, but it's still the focal point. It's kind of playing around with those questions. This is another one in Alana's class. She had this wonderful space out kind of in the country, just kind of rolling hills and picnic tables, classic kind of park bench kind of place. This one took several sessions actually. And I found that I didn't know how to do the drawing board thing at the time. Maybe I did. At the time, I really liked the idea of the flexible dimensions. But I was working on a gallery wrapped canvas, so the dimensions were fixed. And so in this painting, I was playing around with the idea of making a gray border around my painting so that I could kind of crop the painting like with paint in a sense.
Can I ask, had you started looking at Edwin Dickinson at all at this sort of point of your career?
I know I looked at him a lot when I was in Italy, but I'm not sure. I can't remember if Alana told me about him or not. But now I see it definitely in this one. Yeah. But Israel Hirschberg wondered if I was colorblind because he said like it was very value heavy, tone heavy. Right, my paintings. This one's huge. This one is like 40 by 40 inches, something like that. And it was a one shot. This was my backyard. Kind of playing around with wet into wet and using lots of paint and trying to figure out how to make a chain link fence. This was my front yard. I think this was a several sessions painting as well. The car sort of appeared and disappeared many times. Oh yeah, so I ended up quitting my job at the art museum and decided to paint full time. I was in a position where I could do that at the time, and I found this cute little bathroom hut out in the country. The only people who used it were policemen. It was always clean, and it had this cute little pond next to it. So I just decided it was my new outdoor studio. And I would go there in the morning and leave in around evening time. And so this is a painting of the little bathroom hut and my car and the pond. But I ended up making a lot of paintings out there. It was really peaceful. This is another pond, like from the same place, the little baby tree painting. I was thinking a lot about Hawthorne on painting at the time. I think that's just, oh, we'll get there in a minute. Hawthorne on painting and his idea that a painting can just be color spots, where if you have 3 to 5 color spots that are the correct relationship, incorrect relationship to each other, where they're the right tone, the right saturation, hue, and shape. Might be missing one. But if you have those and they're in the right relationship to each other, where they kind of have this, they sing and they feel familiar, you kind of have the beginning of a real space. So I was feeling, at the time, I was feeling very ambitious to refining my colors to get that sense of familiarity in space. This painting is really big. It's like, it might be as tall as I am. So maybe like 6 feet by 4 feet, something like that, but more square than that, maybe more like 5 by 6 feet or 4 by 5 feet. Yeah, I wanted to make something that felt real, and I wanted to put all the time in. And so my husband actually built me an easel that could hold something really big. And I got a large roll of canvas, and just, this was my living room. I just set up in my living room and worked on this tiny piece by tiny piece until it was done. I don't paint like this anymore, and I don't think I will, but it seemed like something I wanted to get out of my system. Yeah, so Hawthorne on painting, if you haven't read it and you're a painter, I highly recommend it. It's just full of gems, wonderful food for thought. You could just read one page and chew on it for months. It's great. Oh yeah, so Edmund Dickinson. This was someone that let's see, I think, yeah, either Alana or Israel Hirschberg told me about him, and the feeling I get in his paintings is that it doesn't really matter what he's painting. It kind of just matters, like the what doesn't matter, but the how matters. The how the light lands on the things is what he's thinking about. He doesn't need to prove to the viewer that, oh, this is grass, and oh, that's sky, and oh, here's some trees. Like, he just wants to give you this experience. And I think that's just so marvelous, and I admire it so much. And it seems to me that hue doesn't matter too much to him, and it's kind of the same. I sort of feel the same way. That value and temperature are key, and hue is a little bit more, it's a little too symbolic. I mean, I don't know if you could call this painting a green painting. It's full of nameless colors, which feels more real to me somehow. So these are really all artists that I was exposed to as a result of meeting Alana and her being so generous with her knowledge. This painting was made by Eve Mansdorf, an American painter. She taught in Indiana, I think, for a long time. But my friend Elise Schweitzer, who's a painting professor over at Holland, she told me about this painting in particular, and she was like, this is the painting that taught me how to paint trees. And so I always return to this painting when I'm painting trees, be like, how did she do that? Something so real about it. Corot, the master. I learned a lot about Corot when I was in Italy. Just know, like, those rooftops look so solid. It's so real. And the painting just works. Like, it's weighted down on the bottom. It's light and airy at the top. I feel like you could enter into it. The composition works. They have like these large areas that are broken up into tiny pieces, but it's still unified, so you can still see the really large pieces. It's just amazing. I know Israel said something about how, I'm trying to remember how I said it. Like, you kind of have to put, I mean, I'm sorry, Israel, if you see this, like, I might be totally saying this wrong, but you kind of have to pick between value or color, unless you're Corot, who can do both perfectly because he has perfect pitch. Perfect pitch meaning you can refine colors in the way you might tune an instrument. He tunes it perfectly so that it really feels like life. Yeah, I was just trying to make a career transcription a few days ago. It's a great refresher. He's the best teacher, really. Another person Alana told me about was Antonio Lopez Garcia. I mean, if you simplify this painting to its base, like abstract composition, I mean, you've got kind of two shapes. It's the dark background and then the light table and the people kind of, they almost turn into one shape. And if you saw this from, 10 feet away, you probably see that, like the two shapes. And it's a beautiful response to the rectangle. Love it. And the way he's got like this little bit of removed like white paint at the top above the girl's head. It's just, it kind of makes this wonderful triangle, invisible triangle. And I think it kind of is the secret to this painting in many ways. Another Antonio Lopez Garcia. I think he kind of takes these normal everyday objects and gives them a humanity. I mean, you can kind of see how these, it looks like pillows maybe, or bundled up cloth. I mean, they almost look like they're in an embrace. Another one. You notice all of the rectangles that are made in these wonderful intervals from the picture plane itself. Sometimes I like to think of painting almost as it's like folding laundry. You're taking a giant pile of like messy details and organizing them in this uh, lovely order, or maybe just like a unique order. So this is a Stuart Shills painting. Big fan of Stuart Shills. Again, really large shapes, constructs these very strong compositions. But still so much atmosphere. All of the colors are kind of married to each other. I did want to read this part. He just started a Substack. Highly recommend subscribing. But I feel like this kind of sums up my feelings about composition. So let's see, he says, years later, I'm still obsessed with looking out at the world through viewfinders, into and through windows, both clean or dirty, screens of all sorts, framing devices and lenses. The edges of the camera viewfinder frame what is seen. With painting and drawing, the edges of paper, panel, canvas, or whatever are the framer, defining, demarcating, enclosing, and bringing to life that visual playing field within which everything being constructed, shapes, lights, darks, colors, has a distinct choreographic presence. The surface is a structural architecture held within its borders. So it is with looking at the world through the viewfinder. I love the way he talks. You should listen to any of his free talks. They're fantastic.
Sorry,
Ken Cooley. Yeah.
question. Name of the artist who started the Substack, please, again.
Oh, sure. Stuart Shills. Last name is spelled S-H-I-L-S. And Stuart's friend is good friends with Ken Cooley, who I think might be here. Hi, Ken. I'm a big fan of Ken's work, and I took a class with him a few years ago at the Mount Gretna School of Art. It's really helped me think about shapes and how to organize things and kind of pursue a painting beyond its original freshness. But he wrote this wonderful article with Painting Perceptions, the popular blog called Notes on Color. And I go back and read it every once in a while because there's so many gems there. So I'm just going to read this part. Are we doing okay on time? I'm like worried. Are we all right?
Yeah, keep going.
Josh,
Yeah, no, absolutely. Keep going. You're fine.
All right. So here's just a little taste of notes on color. Start by putting down the one color that excites you the most, then the next, relating it to the first. This is the relationship that excites you the most. Then the third color, relating it always to the whole. You're emphasizing what interests you and minimizing other things by putting them in the service of your true passion and leaving out altogether what distracts. Keep it simple. Each color plays its part. Less is more. Each element is made to do more. I often look at paintings, good, well-observed paintings, and I wonder why they're not more exciting. There is an exciting color relationship in there somewhere, but it's being drowned out by dozens of other colors. Take a random paragraph from the newspaper, remove the right words, and you have a poem. Great stuff. Stanley Lewis, this is the picture of Stanley Lewis and how he constructed his own easel. I think he even had a cover over the top so he could paint in the rain. So great. So this is a Stanley Lewis painting. I think he spends years on his paintings. But he would also do the thing where he'd add pieces of canvas. He'd put staples into the canvas, and a really kind of wild way of forging his vision. Emily Nelligan, another person Alana told me about. It's all in black and white, so dramatic. And I love how she makes the light world and the shadow world play with each other. I believe all her paintings are charcoal. I guess they're charcoal drawings, but they feel like paintings. So much rhythm. And Jillian Peterson Craig. Again, it's two shapes. You've got a yellow shape at the top and a purple shape on the bottom. And so that creates this wonderful sense of impact. And then all the little things that keep us there so much longer. She's really amazing. I believe a lot of her paintings are imagined. I think she made this one out of her head. And she does all these wonderful still lifes. But again, the Rothko. Look at these stripes. She's got the purple stripe and the yellow stripe and then the turquoise and then the kind of color field that is the still life within the turquoise rectangle. Israel Hirschberg. Yeah. So I guess we're getting to the point in the talk where I did finally go to Italy and participated in the masterclass program with Israel Hirschberg. I was there for 6 weeks. And I really trained for it. I went to that pond studio that I showed you some paintings from, and I thought about going to Italy. I would go and I'd train. Felt like I was training for a marathon or something. I'd go paint from 9 to 5 a lot of the time, and I went to Italy, and I was like, okay, it's time to learn, and it was a huge learning experience. But again, this is another Hirschberg. I see Rothko here too. I mean, look, there's the stripe and the rectangle, and then the rectangle of the fish within the rectangle of the box, and how it's both flat, but also very, very cubic. His guest of honor that year was Susan Jane Walp. This is one of her paintings. I love how she puts things, she plays with the middle of a painting. Like the center of that grapefruit, is it in the center? She puts it almost there, but it's not there. And then pushes our eye all the way around the picture and then leaves us to puzzle about where the middle is because she's orchestrated this world with such mastery. Okay, so these are some of my paintings when I was in Italy. Just thinking a lot about light world and shadow world, keeping them separate and organizing my darks in a way that felt like an abstract, harmonious picture. And then all the lights kind of can operate almost as background in a way. Another one. Yeah, I remember at one point it felt like a formula that would work often, though formulas are only so useful. Is to make the focal point decide where it goes in the picture, where it wants to go in the picture, and then everything else in the picture kind of serves that focal point. So in this picture, it was that pointy tree, the triangle tree, and then everything else, all of the other shapes were needed to be kind of secondary. Yeah, Italy had such an amazing sense of light, so kind of warm and clear and crisp. And I like this painting because I ended up putting like a piece of a car in the bottom. That was sort of fun, sort of ancient and contemporary. Yeah, this one was another old Civita painting. I thought it was going to be a tall, skinny picture. I think the area on the right-hand side was going to be the picture, and I felt like it needed to expand. So I think I already had extra like I just made the tall, skinny shape with tape on the canvas. So I took the tape off and kind of just made it bigger. And it ended up working all right. The sort of dark area in the bottom left hand is a row of cars. And I was kind of thinking Dickinson. How do I make a row of cars where I don't really care about proving that I'm painting a car? I'm experiencing the light in this particular area of the visual world. I was also kind of playing around with intervals. I mean, I'm always playing with intervals, but in this one, you can kind of see like there's this tall vertical on the right hand side and tall vertical on the left, and they're similar widths, but the one on the left is a little bit wider. And then it's also playing off of the interval of the sky at the top and then the ground at the bottom. The ground is just a little bit wider. The sky is a little bit more narrow. So it's really a Roscoe again, right? I mean, there's the color field of the building with the windows in the middle, and then everything else is kind of framing it and creating pressure on it to encase it into another world. Another Italy painting. One thing I was wondering about when I was in Italy is how far does a person have to push a painting for it to have impact and work? And so I started making a lot of paintings there where I left the white of the canvas, kind of used the white of the canvas as a color. And I painted really fast and I stopped kind of quickly. And I was just kind of seeing like, when does one stop? It's kind of the golden question. You can go for years or you could go for 5 minutes, and really like which painting is gonna, when it's on the wall in your house and you're looking at it, what's gonna feel good to look at? Yeah, so when I was in Italy, I got to go to the Bologna, to the Morandi Museum. That was life-changing. Um, Golly, seeing his paintings in person is an experience. Like the way he puts paint down, there's this shimmering life to each brushstroke. There's so much attention to intervals. They feel like very musical paintings. He loves the idea, he seems to love the idea of kind of ratcheting colors very close together, and seeing, how close can I get to this other color and still be distinct. It's just such a wonderful game, and he's a real master. And again, like Susan Jane Walt, playing with the middle. He put that base right in the middle, and then moves us just a little bit one way and the other. So it's like sort of game of tensions and pressures. Rothko again. You've got the two stripes, and then you've got a rectangle that is this still life. It's kind of embraced by all of the other shapes. I mean, it's not Rothko. This is Morandi. Sorry. It's Morandi. I'm just seeing Rothko in a lot of these paintings. Notice like the tiny little interval changes between the three boxes, and the differences in kind of gold color. They're the same, and then they're like just I mean, maybe he took a tiny piece of green and added it to one of them. Ernie Seneca was in Italy when I was there, so I got to meet him and hear him give a talk. And I'm a huge fan of his paintings. I love the way all of the colors are so unified. He lives in Pennsylvania, a few states north of where I live, and it does feel like Pennsylvania. It's gray and clear and peaceful. I love the play of color. It's like Joseph Albers. Joseph Albers is a wonderful abstract painter. Not really sure how to classify him exactly, but he plays around with relationships of colors in a very conceptual way. But you can see here in this Seneca painting, the way he's playing with this white sky and then this white building, and how they're totally different colors, but they kind of symbolize the same color. It's just very fun. Leonard Anderson. Leonard Anderson taught Alana briefly, I believe. But I've heard a lot of quotes by him. I never did get to meet him. But one thing he said that has always stuck with me is that a painting is a box of light and air. It's a goal to shoot for, and I feel like I see that in a lot of his work. It's another Leonard Anderson. Notice the feeling of air between the different color greens. And Claire, I love Claire's work. Claire was in Italy at the same time I was. I'm a big fan. I love the sense of the how, not the what. And the placement of dark shapes around the light ones. And the feeling of how some things feel so solid, like that yellow squash, and then the white ball feels so airy. It's like really magic to me. And look at that, I just noticed, oh my goodness, look at that pink in the top left-hand corner. It's just didn't notice it at first, and now it's like the star of the painting. My goodness.
Lena's asking who, and it's Claire Howard who's in the chat. Claire's.
Yes. Yeah. I actually made a painting that was kind of based off of this painting because I love the way the placement of the tree and the way it kind of feels like a hand and how it's interacting with the house shape. I have this like theory about paintings being so a Rothko, right, is the echo of the rectangle within the rectangle. But a painting itself is kind of an echo of a house, right? So most walls are a rectangle. So you've got house and then painting and then house inside it. It's just like a wonderful sense of like an echo, a repetition, a confirmation that there's that there's straight lines, that there's corners. I think it's somehow comforting to a human psyche to see repeating rectangles. Okay, Alex Cohen, huge fan. He was in Italy at the same time I was, and he does put on a show. Him and his wife Clara put on a show called Art at King's Oaks, and I think it's actually happening next weekend. It's in Pennsylvania, and I did get to participate in a show with them, I think in 2019. But I'm a huge fan of his work. A lot of it is observed, like direct observation, and then I think a lot of it is invented, imagined, something along those lines. I told him that his paintings make me think of like subconscious super dreaming, something like that. Just they feel real in the world that he's made for them. And this one, I think he actually put his painting in the barn near where he lives, and the swallows that lived in the barn ended up making kind of marks on the painting. So I think he said this was actually a collaboration between him and the swallows to make this painting. Again, I see Rothko, right? You got the two large rectangles. And then the supporting actors, like this beautiful triangle in between the two curtains and the little tiny rectangles at the top of the curtains, and then all these little bottles, which I wonder if maybe that's a shout out to Morandi. Okay, so this is a picture so you can see me on the left-hand side and several of the other people I went out painting with. I think Claire's in that painting too, in that photo too, actually. Yeah, this was 2017. I think we went on a field trip to go paint in a different city. But I think this was at the end of the day, so we all had that goofy painting smile where we'd just been, feeling a little cross-eyed after painting all day. Okay, so yeah, I went to Italy in 2017, and then that winter, I think it was January, I found out I was going to become a parent. I was pregnant, and so that was a really different, really big change for me, and it really affected how I thought about painting. I was thinking, kind of how am I going to do this? Were a lot of my thoughts at the time. And so I didn't make a lot of paintings, but I did make a couple that were really long-term. Just it became part of my days where I'd just paint for hours and hours on the same picture. We moved several times in that year. So this was a painting of, actually, this was my grandparents' lake house. This was the closet where everybody put their linens back. And I thought it was just a really fun portrait of my family, because you can kind of see different characters in how different people would fold up the sheets and put them away. You know, some of them were really tidy, some of them were just like, you know, they just kind of bundled them up and stuffed them in, and I just thought that was just so human and delightful. And so that's what this painting was about for me. Yeah, and then we moved again, and I wanted to make a painting of the items on my kitchen shelf. And the composition just wasn't working, so I added another canvas and then another, and then I think ultimately the painting includes 12 pieces of canvas. It became kind of big. I think it was about 30 by 30 inches, somewhere along those lines. And you can kind of see like the other earlier kitchen paintings where some items just have a few facts about them, like maybe just a highlight on the item is the only thing that ends up getting painted. You can see there's a flip-flop in the bottom left-hand corner, but the whole flip-flop didn't get included. So at this time, I was thinking like, how am I going to do this? How am I going to be a parent and a painter? And I realized I'd seen online that this artist, Aubrey Leventhal, was also a new parent. I think she'd had her child around the time that I discovered her. And so we had a short email. We emailed each other for a little while, and she was telling me like, yeah, you can do it. She was very encouraging, and you can see in her painting, like in this one, how her child is kind of peeking over her shoulder in this portrait. She talked to me about working from memory, and she really makes me think about Bonnard and how she kind of hides things in her paintings. And there's little joke. The longer you stay in one of her paintings, the more you can kind of see these little jokes. And the way she strategically places dark shapes within a very light painting. She's a real master at composing, I think. And I think at some point, I can't remember if it was her, but someone referenced Robert Henry's book, it's called The Art Spirit, and this idea where the motif can actually be quite distracting from the painting. And that sometimes it really is better to paint a painting in one room and have the motif in another room so that the painting can inform the painting and not kind of get in the way of, like, the motif can be almost too demanding in a way, and can be distracting from what a painting actually wants to be. This is a painting by Mitchell Johnson. At this time I started a blog on my website and started interviewing artists. And I interviewed Mitchell Johnson, and it was really inspiring to see how he makes these giant paintings. And he thinks a lot about Joseph Albers as well, and the relationships of color and kind of playing with flatness of space versus depth. He told me the best way to learn and make transcriptions was to make transcriptions from the three big C's, Chardin, Corot, and Cézanne. I'm still working on that, but I think he's probably spot on. Yeah, Chardin. I've made several drawings of Chardin's. I'm still working on a painting transcription of it from one of his paintings. But I love how his still lifes, they kind of follow a similar trend, in that there's a really strong base at the bottom and then some sort of triangular situation in the still life. But he's so clever and subtle and human. Another thing Mitchell Johnson told me about was this book, Ninth Street Women. Highly recommend it. It's about these five women painters who were professional painters during the time of abstract expressionism in the United States. Talks about their struggles and how they really stayed the course and found their own kind of internal rhythms. It's a really big book, but totally worth it. Another thing I did when my daughter was really young is I signed up for a business class with this guy, Brainerd Carey. I think it's called Praxis. Also highly recommend it. Learned a lot about art business and how to interact with people in the art business world, like gallerists, and how to build something in that way. Yeah, this is a book he wrote, Brainerd Carey wrote. This is another book highly recommend. Artwork, again, more on the art business side of things, how to have a studio visit, how to get to know galleries, and just kind of the nuts and bolts of being a career artist. It was really helpful. This is another person whose work I looked at a fair amount. I think after Italy and when I was a young mom. Mika Salomon, I believe is from Israel. But again, another person who we don't need to know what it is she's painting, but we know how. We're having this wonderful experience of folding material and box-like items and light shining on the whole thing. And there's this focal point of telling us just exactly how these little bits of materials work together. I see so much appreciation for the visual world in her work. It doesn't have to be a grand landscape to be just transformational. And I love her variation of edges, how there's these really sharp edges, like you can see kind of at the base of the shell here, it's a really sharp edge, and then very soft and ethereal towards the top. And, oh dear, Susanna Phillips, that's right. She was the guest of honor with JSS in 2018 when I was not able to attend that year. But I'm really into her work. It makes me think of Morandi and how to organize rectangles within a rectangle. And this beautiful sense of unified light, everything. Look at the difference between these two blacks here. They're so similar, but they're different. But they're also encased in this atmosphere that everything's encased in. And again, those blacks, just like delicious. And these like slices of white. Albert York, Israel Hirschberg, let me know about him. Sort of luscious, the handling of paint. And he seemed to give himself permission to paint just about anything, which I love. He didn't have to stay with one thing, but he still approached it in with his special voice. It seems to, the bones and the flesh have so much in common in the way they're applied to the surface. Okay, oh, I didn't crop this one. Sorry, guys. Rothko, yeah. Did I crop? No, I guess I didn't crop any of the Rothkos. Well, I've been talking about Rothko a lot. Here's some examples of his work. I guess I kind of feel like a successful painting feels like a room in which there are walls on both sides. There's a floor, there's a back wall, and there's a ceiling. And he distills that to is very, very basic, right? Like the three color fields in this picture, for example, you've got the back wall, feels like that purple square. And then you've got the floor, which is this orange stripe. And then you've got something in the foreground close to you, which is this dark brown stripe. And then we have these tiny little orange stripes on either side that give us something to keep the painting closed. Those are the walls on either side. And we got the ceiling, which is this tiny stripe of orange at the top. Just gives us a place to kind of live in the picture. And I think I just love how straightforward he is about it. Okay, so I tend to kind of go back and forth in my practice between really fast painting and really slow painting. And one of my goals has been to really refine my colors. Get it just I can't be Corot, nobody else can be Corot, but I can maybe get 2 steps closer. So I kind of made up a little game where I'd make a really long-term painting, and then on a drawing board on a piece of like primed linen. And then I'd have a little piece of primed linen taped next to it, which I called my notes. And this picture here is an example of one of my notes. And what I did was that I'd mix up a color and put it on my picture, and then make a little dot on my small piece of linen. And then I decided I'm going to try to mix this color 4 times. So I'd mix the color, make a dot, scrape the color off of the painting, and then try again and make another dot. And so these notes, these dots, are kind of a record of how many times did I try to refine this one color. It's almost like a list of just kind of keeping myself accountable to doing some slowing down, entering a more meditative state, and approaching some next level where the colors are in more, just a better sense of pitch, musical pitch, where they're closer to being right, whatever that is. And it's the more I did the notes, the more I felt like I could figure out what right is. You know, the goal and the practice itself were sort of moving targets in a way. But I ended up really liking the notes kind of on their own too. I've got stacks of them. It's a couple more. So here's some paintings I made with the notes. And for this one, I think it was a night painting I set up kind of after everybody went to bed. And I was already, I was really tired already, but I'd just be like, okay, I'll do 10 notes, 10 colors. And that'll be my kind of installment on this picture today. And then, the next week we'd rearrange the room and it'd be a whole different painting, but like, okay, I'll do another 10 colors. And just kind of, it was almost like investing these practices over and over again into this one square to kind of see where it would go. And some of the paintings worked and some of them didn't. Here's another one. It's a kitchen painting. It was very slow. I mean, every color would take like 10 minutes to get to a point where I was happy with it. And you can see here, I was adding bits of canvas to a lot of these pictures too, to adjust the dimensions and play around with the composition.
Did you go back to the kitchen painting again?
Yeah.
Was this a painting that you spent a lot of time with? Was it a faster painting or a longer?
Yeah, this is one of the slow paintings where I used the notes. So it probably maybe 20 sessions
Training sessions.
something like that. Mm-hmm. And I'd write down the time of day and, if it was cloudy or raining or sunny outside, so I could have sort of a similar motif to come back to. And I think I would sand it every once in a while too, so you can kind of see some areas of it are sanded. And sanding a painting, I like that because it can sort of unify everything, and then keep working on top of the sanding. It also makes a painting more receptive to new paint.
So we've got a question for you. It's from Ken Cooley said about the kitchen painting, I believe, beautiful.
Okay.
Kathleen Hall is, do you remix from scratch each note?
Oh, that's a good question. No, I don't remix from scratch. I just kind of add to the pile of paint I already have going on. But since I have the notes, I can kind of see what the color was, my first try was versus my fourth try. So I can kind of, it's sort of a way to like chart my progress towards more refinement.
So thank you.
Yeah. Yeah, I think at this stage I was really interested in dark paintings, kind of lots of. So I know an artist, Phil Geiger, said once, he said, you can either have a black painting with white spots or a white painting with black spots. So this painting to me is a black painting with white spots. It's just a few white spots at the top. And this is a much more recent painting. I think I did it last year. And I was experimenting with putting the notes in the painting, so you can kind of see them at the bottom. It's almost like like pixels or something. So this is a picture of my plein air painting setup. Kind of call it my outdoor studio. I've got this blue wagon and a full Julian easel, and underneath all of those boxes, there's another Tupperware with my big glass palette in it, and it all just kind of fits. And take it out outside when I can. I love painting in my neighborhood, so I don't have to get in the car. I can just kind of go to a nearby park and set up. Sometimes it's fun to explore and try some new places. Yeah, so here's some plein air paintings made over the years. This is a picture of our local hospital. It's thinking about Rothko, big square inside a square. It's also kind of thinking more narratively in the sense, I think I made this painting during the pandemic, so I was thinking about hospitals and how they were going to take us, hopefully, to more normalcy again. So yeah, at this point I was a parent of a little kid. She was maybe 2 or 3, and I was having a hard time finding time to paint. And so I started waking up really early, like kind of before the sun came up, and I would go out in my neighborhood. There were a few places where there were good street lights to paint under and that were safe and good. There were good things to look at. So yeah, I made a series of really early morning paintings, especially in the summer. The twilight lasts a lot longer, so I'd have maybe like an hour and a half sometimes to make 1 or 2 paintings out in this really beautiful light. That's the wonderful thing about twilight, is you don't really have to find a shady spot. Everything's kind of immersed in this purple light. So this is actually a view right outside my front door. There's a cemetery near my house. I like to paint there sometimes. So this is a view from the cemetery. I live in a pretty hilly area, so I love a good mountain view. This is a really fast painting, again, early in the morning. And actually, you could look on YouTube if you want to watch me paint it. It was a demo. I filmed it, so you kind of see how it was made. Yeah, and every once in a while it will snow here, so I have some snow paintings. Kind of changes the whole landscape. I love the relationship between a white sky and white snow. It's just sort of a fun puzzle to play with. And then the way trees look when they don't have leaves on them. They're kind of purpley and feathery. And oftentimes they can be sort of red looking, depending on the light. Yeah, this is another winter painting. It wasn't snowing, but it was cold and sunny. And this is a view right outside my house. I think I've painted this tree like 30 times.
So, got a question for you, an interesting question from Pierrick. How would you characterize the view that you put into your landscape while painting in plein air? Is it sentimental or even romantic in a way?
Oh, I mean, I think I initially sort of cringe when I hear the word sentimental. I don't love that. Um, but I guess it could be that way in the sense that I feel like when I'm painting, I'm having kind of a conversation with the motif. I feel like the motif kind of contributes to what I find important and what I want to note in my picture. And I guess it could be sentimental in the sense that I mean, I know this sounds a little woo, but it's like those trees are my friends. You know, this is a record of like my conversation, pictorial conversation with these buildings and trees, these inanimate objects that speak very differently from people. So yeah, maybe a little bit, but I also like the idea that a painting can be kind of rough and harsh and difficult and jagged, which doesn't feel very sentimental at all. So
We've got
yes,
a
yeah.
comment. Jennifer says she thinks it's a reverent view, which is a nice point. And then us also Lee asking if you could spell Anna Phillips' name, as she'd like to see more of her work. Is that?
Yeah, sure. Okay, so it's Susanna. I think it's spelled with an S.
Pardon.
S-U-S, think.
Yeah, I'll spell it. I didn't realize
Okay.
who that
Yeah,
was
yeah.
going for. I'll put that in. Don't worry, you can keep going.
Okay, cool. Right. Yeah, Susanna Phillips. Amazing. I know. I come back to her all the time because it's her work's so distilled and holy feeling in a way. Okay. Yeah, this is a recent painting. I just found a new parking garage. Parking garages are great places to paint if they're in a safe-ish place, because if it's raining outside, you know, you're already under shelter. And you can sometimes get a great view if you're up kind of high. So, and I'm in a valley surrounded by mountains, so I love the idea of getting kind of up high so I can see some mountain views. Yeah, yeah, I guess that's all I'll say about that. This is my backyard. Just trying to play around with more detail on this one. I'd say it's a white painting with black spots. This is the same view that's in a lot of the other paintings I just showed you. Playing around with kind of eliminating a lot of things and sticking to the bare essentials. I think I actually did work on this painting a couple times. I went back and worked on it a little bit from memory, because I found the motif was distracting in this instance. Definitely, again, a white painting with black spots. Oh, and this one, I've also been, I do some paintings every once in a while, like sitting down. I'll bring a picnic blanket and just sit on the ground, which can be really fun, especially if if your legs are tired, there's that. But also the world looks really different down low. So this was in a cemetery. I set out a blanket and set up just sitting on the ground. And I think the particular challenge of this painting is how do I make a painting where the sky is the focal point, but is also kind of a void? So how does one make a painting about nothing, where nothing really is the focal point? How can everything in a painting be a supporting actor, and this sort of empty air space is the most exciting thing? I like that question. So that's kind of what this painting was about to me. Okay, so collage. Yeah, so I wanted to tell you guys a little bit about some of my other projects. My main project are my oil paintings, my outdoor paintings. I think I do that most of the time, are these one-shot landscapes around my town, the ones that we just looked at. But I also really love collage, and I took a collage class with Ken Cooley at Mount Gretna School of Art in 2022. And I really love it as a side practice. And it all fits in a box, kind of a box that kind of in measurements, maybe it's like 18 by 24. It's a pretty small box. So it's very, very portable, which I love. But yeah, the collages have become, I call it interior observation. So you could also call it invention or imagining, but for me, it's kind of like, oh, this is Rotem Amizur, someone I really admire, who's a collage artist, and also I believe studied with Ken Cooley. And here's one of my collages. They're all almost all of them are from my head, and they're answering questions. Like this one was, I don't think I've ever seen a hot air balloon at night. I wonder what that would look like. And so just made a picture of it. What about a sailboat at night? What about a car? And what is the feeling of being kind of in the void at night where you don't really know where you're going? There's something kind of mysterious and magical about that feeling. So yeah, the collages are about these kind of subconscious questions. And often I don't have a plan as to what I want the collage to look like. I just sort of start sorting through the colored papers and wait for some kind of symbol to come up, and I just kind of trust it and go with that. Like for this one, it was like, a car. Okay, I'm gonna make a car. Okay, well, maybe it's near the river, and oh, you know what? It could be snowing, and it just sort of snowballs like that and into this kind of surprising, it's almost like a new memory. This was made from memory of that same scene outside my front door. And I spend a lot of time on these, actually. I keep a stack, and I just kind of go through the stack over and over and over again until I want them on my wall. These collages are very much for me. I almost enjoy them more than the paintings because they feel so personal, and I don't know. I love the simplicity. I don't need a lot of things going on. I just get like straight to the point. Okay, and this is another thing. I wasn't sure if I was going to tell you guys about it, but I am going to because it's kind of part of the full picture. Um, you know, selling paintings at a gallery is just it's not a regular gig, right? Uh, it's very feast or famine. And so one thing I've done kind of in between when I got to pay the bills or I think it was I also did this to save up to go to Italy is I set up this 5 minute portrait booth and I would do it at festivals and all sorts of places. Right now I've been doing it downtown in Roanoke with a couple of other people who do it too, where they don't really do make pictures, but there's musicians, and there's a juggler, there's a balloon artist, yeah, um, magicians and musicians both. Anyway, it's a lot of fun, and it's a way to make some kind of grocery money. Um, so here's some examples of my little 5 minute portraits. People will just come up and they'll sit on a stool in front of me, and I paint them and kind of just see what happens. Some I've done some kind of ritzy parties. Some people like to pay me hourly, which is fun. These are kind of different generations of the portrait booth. I've been doing it for a while now, so it's definitely evolved. I think this was a pool party. um, this is one of the first ones. It's really old. And this is me doing plein air painting. I don't know why I put that. Okay, so this is the what kind of how it looks now. Um, this was like a pancake breakfast. This is my setup downtown. And some people, they like me to paint pictures from photos. They'll just text me a photo and I'll paint it in my style in 5 minutes. And it's really rewarding. I like working with people who don't necessarily think about art a whole lot, but they want it in their lives anyway. And and it's interesting to know kind of what's important to people, strangers. Um, yeah, here's a couple of my other more recent portraits. It's what I love these relationship. Like this was a father daughter. Um, just kind of getting their vibe. Um, yeah, so this is the last little bit. We're almost done.
Ken,
I
Ken
yeah.
said the portraits are wonderful.
Oh, thank you. Yay. Um, yeah, I really enjoy that. So this is kind of my last body of work that I've been working on for a while is making large paintings. So this painting right now on the slideshow is very small. It's like maybe 4 by 5 inches. Um, and so I use a small painting to then make a large painting. And that one is 30 by 40 inches maybe. And it's amazing. Like this little one it was one of my early morning paintings. It probably took under an hour to make. And then this one took 2 years. It took so long. It's amazing how a large painting, it's just a whole different ballgame. But I really enjoy it. I made a handful of them and I'm hoping to make some more. This is another example. It's just the tiny painting made on site. Ooh, okay. And then another study I made on site. And then this was the large painting that resulted from it.
Was that also the larger one? Was was that something you spent a long time on?
Oh yeah, oh yeah. I kind of made them in the two I've shown you so far. I kind of made them in tandem with each other, and it was a couple of years. Yeah.
It's interesting because seeing them on a computer in this scale, the larger and smaller paintings look like they have a lot in common. But it's so interesting to hear that the process and the duration of painting was so different. What do you think it was that really kind of separated them in terms of in such a making painting less than an hour and then working on something over a period of 2 years or several years?
Um, I mean, I think large paintings are so immersive and they feel almost like another person just because of their size. And so there's so many more facets to consider. Whereas the tiny ones are more like a little book. So it's they don't feel like another person in the same way. It's more like, yeah, I mean, the real answer is I don't know. I don't know why large paintings take so long and why, yeah, they feel so different, but they do. I think it has something to do with just the immersion. Yeah. Yeah, and so I guess the last thing is these are people I'm thinking about right now. Matisse, kind of obsessed with Matisse right now, is working with windows. Also, Georgia O'Keeffe. There's a wonderful biography I just read about her. I read it with my friend Kat. I'm actually at her house right now. And the way she just created impact and simplified things, but still so much delicacy and attention and love. So yeah, that is the end of the slideshow.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Laura. Super talk. I think if anyone would like to, we could open the floor up to some final questions. We've got some people saying thank you in the chat. I'm not sure if you can see.
Yes.
I'll get the ball rolling as I have a question I've been thinking about throughout your chat, and I was quite surprised to see that you didn't. You quickly referenced Bonnard, and I was wondering if sort of Bonnard, Vuillard, and the Nabi painters like Volaton, as well, for example, if they're a group of painters that are ever on your mind, and if you ever think of, because there's a certain sort of experimentation with their work, and also I really feel like a kind of presence of Vuillard in a lot of your painting, and I was wondering if he is someone that you think about. Are they those painters that are ever on your mind?
100%. I don't know why I didn't include him. The list of favorite painters is so long. So it's like, yeah, I wrote a paper about Vuillard in college, and I remember I didn't feel like I knew that much about painting at the time, but seeing his work was so, yeah, the way he hides things and is very democratic um, about a wallpaper is just as important as a person. I love that.
Yeah, that's nice. It's interesting to hear, because I really feel like there's an affinity between your work and his, and it's cool to know. Thank you for sharing. And I'm wondering, has anybody got any? Look, we're having lots of thanks. Thank you, wonderful presentation, amazing. Thank you. I learned so much from how you learn from painters constantly. That was fascinating. Many thanks. Wonderful. Thank you, Laura. Amazing talk. I was hold on, I lost that. Amazing talk. I was fascinated throughout. The breadth of knowledge was so well illustrated and explained. Ken Cooley, thank you, Laura. Very enjoyable talk. And we have a question regarding dark spots in a white landscape paintings. Do you feel like the large black spot would eventually become a pure color without any white mixed in?
I don't think I really understand the question.
I'm not quite sure I understand.
Yeah, I mean,
I think maybe maybe referring to sort of those sort of focal points within the high key paintings, whether you can ever consider sort of inserting pure, almost pure color as opposed to color maybe associated with tone through the lens of tones. Maybe that's what she's getting at.
Hey, I'm sorry. I'll try to explain my question. When you talked about a dark spot in a white painting and a white spot in a dark, yeah. So my question was in a landscape painting, if you ever felt that the dark spot will ever become a pure color, like.
Oh, okay. So I don't think it would in one of my paintings. I feel like I could see that in the Matisse, though, he does a lot of really pure color. But yeah, I think my approach is usually very tonal in the sense that a dark spot would not be a pure color. It'd usually be a nameless color, some version of all of the colors mixed together, some kind of ratio. But I think it could operate that way, and that could be a really fun experiment in
actually ties into something I was thinking about asking, because it seems like you have a very sort of playful element to your own practice, the collage, the 5-minute portraits, and I was wondering if you, because there's a certain kind of gravity and complexity to your sort of tonal, your landscapes, your oil painting, and I was ever wondering, looking at Matisse and looking at painters that do experiment with pure color, is that do you ever consider marrying those two worlds together? I was also wondering, like, how does perhaps the experimentation inform you when you then do go out and paint, from observation?
Let's see. Yes, definitely. I mean, I painted with a lot more pure color when I was younger, and then kind of fell in love with the nameless colors. And so I'm sort of wondering if I'm going to come full circle and it's going to be all, red, red, blue, and yellow or something like that. But I don't know. I mean, that's kind of part of the adventure, right? Just kind of trying things and see what works.
Yeah.
What was the other half of your question?
I think it was just asking you how much your sort of experimental paintings and collage, how it's informing where you compose from observation.
Oh yeah, I mean, I think they do inform each other for sure. But I don't really know exactly how. I mean, I think mostly they inform each other compositionally. I'm just kind of playing around with, if this shape is here and this shape is here, what happens? And the more I do that, the more the answers become kind of rich and evolve. But yeah, it's kind of hard to translate into words, to be honest. I don't really know.
Yeah, there's certainly a mystery.
Right.
Right. No, I completely relate to that. We've got another interesting question, maybe a good one to end on.
Okay.
More interesting in the end, shapes or colors?
Oh, that's not fair. Oh, shapes or color? Color.
Color
Are you
wins. Color wins the
like
day.
what's like, if I had to choose, like, which one do I like better? Like, I guess color. I mean, yeah, it's a feast.
Lovely.
Yeah.
All right, guys. Well, I'm just going to ask if anybody has any final questions before we all say good night or good afternoon to Laura. Anyone else would like to ask? Here we go. Okay, another good one. Color, but it's value first. Good point and good question.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's values first. Yeah.
Agreed. I don't know if Matisse would agree, but
I know. I need to make some transcriptions and figure it out.
I guess it depends which Matisse you're talking to.
That's true, my lord. Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Laura. That was a really fascinating talk and very, very revealing. Thank you for sort of sharing kind of all sorts of different facets of your process and your inspirations and yeah, greatly appreciated. It seemed like everybody had a wonderful time, and yeah, big thank you. And we'll say good night to everyone for now. Thank you.
Okay, good night, everybody.
Thank you very much.
Bye.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
I'll add one more thing before everybody goes. This talk
Yeah.
will be on YouTube, perhaps even by the end of the evening, if not very soon. So watch out for it. Spread the word, and tell your friends about Laura's painting, and spread the word about these artist talks. We've got some very exciting artists coming to talk over the next few months. Some of them, actually, I think all of them perhaps were referenced in this
Yeah.
talk today. So there's a few others perhaps that weren't, but yeah. So there's a few clues for you, but there'll be some announcements soon. And thank you so much, Laura, on behalf
Yeah.
of my students, and hello to everyone from the greater internet world of artdom. And yeah.
Yay. Bye, everybody.
Laura, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye.